Good evening, Authentic Fam. Welcome back to Authentic Alphas with your boy Ayindei. And today I got a guest with me. What's your name, man?
Dimitri.
Dimitri, where you from?
I'm originally Russian, but I've
Okay.
been living in the States for almost 20 years now.
Wow. So, what part of Russia did you move from?
Well, it's actually Ukraine now, right? So
Ukraine.
I was
Okay.
born in Kiev, but most of my family's Russian, so I got family all over the place. I've lived in a few places in Russia, including Moscow, and
Nice.
kind of around that area. So mostly on the European side.
Okay. How many languages you speak?
So I speak Russian completely fluently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Natively. I speak English. As you see, obviously, no problem, no language barrier there. I also speak some French and some German as well. I can kind of understand some Spanish. I wish I spoke a little bit more of it. Obviously, here in Miami, it's very
Yeah.
useful. But language is something comes pretty naturally to me. I mean, I've been bilingual, trilingual all my life, and your brain just kind of works a little bit differently. So it's easy to pick up stuff if you're really trying to learn a new language.
Wow. So, well, I imagine that comes in handy with travel. What would you say is your favorite language?
Well, I love travel to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it's something that's a big part of, always been a big part of my life, as far as personal travel, but also I do a lot of it for work as well,
Okay.
domestic and international. As far as language, I mean, obviously, I love my native tongue, right? That's what I grew up speaking. That's my culture. I love the way it sounds, and it's just something that is very familiar to me, right? But I do love other languages as well and the way they sound. I mean, German's always been pretty interesting to me, so that's kind of another language that I decided to go kind of on my own and go learn, right? So it's just something that just kind of piqued my interest.
Okay. Yeah, I regret not learning multiple languages. I actually failed German. I didn't put a lot of effort into it.
It's a pretty tough
But
language.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But I mean, if I put my mind to it, so that's why I wanted to ask you. Did you know from a young age that like multi languages were going to be very valuable, or you just liked it, is why you did it, or you knew it was a good
I
investment?
honestly had no idea. It's something that kind of happened by accident, but then kind of piqued my interest as I got into it.
Mm,
I ended up in the U.S. by accident. My dad and my parents at the time, he got a job out here in the States. We never planned to come to the U.S., but he got a job, so I kind of moved with my family,
hmm.
right? And obviously, when you're young, it's easy to pick up new things
Yeah,
and
of
new
course.
languages, right? So I already knew some English kind of coming here, but really, when you get thrown into that environment and you have to kind of put on the spot and use it as much as possible, that's when you really learn, because you pick up things that people use on a daily, instead of the kind of things that you just pick up in a book, right? Or
Yeah,
a
because the
teacher
need.
teaching you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's actual need to
And American English is very different
from what they teach in the textbook.
from what we taught in Europe or what we learned in Europe, right? Because we learned more of the British type of
Exactly.
English. So I actually had a little bit of a Brit accent when I first spoke English.
Yeah, me
But
too. When I
yeah,
first came to the country, shortly after I went to England, so
yeah.
for a while I was talking with an English accent. So, how much of an advantage has that been with the ladies, like being able to speak, all these different languages? Because I know it's they like it even when they don't speak
Yeah,
that
every
other
now and then, I mean,
language.
definitely a benefit. When you meet new people in general, right, men or
Hmm.
women, they do find it intriguing, right? It's a respectable thing, to be able to speak different languages.
Right.
Certainly, it can be impressive, when you're out there and you might be meeting a girl or talking to someone at a bar, if they happen to be
Right.
from a different country and you know some words in that language, you definitely pull that card out every now and then,
Well, I was gonna ask
nothing
you
wrong with it.
if you've ever been dealing with a girl for some time, but you still haven't told her that you speak her native language. Like, have you ever messed with a French girl and just pretended like you didn't know any French?
Well, I mean, I usually never tell people right off the bat, especially when I meet them,
Mm,
kind of my life story of where I'm from, right? Obviously, I kind of want to meet them and get to know them as a person, right? And then it kind of
right.
slips out. Oh, hey, by the way, I speak these languages, and this is where I'm from, right? And usually, it's kind of a shock
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
can speak English, quite natively, right? In most
Right,
cases, so they have no idea,
right.
and I don't look
Well,
that different from people
where'd
here.
you come to when
Most
you first came to the States? Where did you Where'd your family move to
So
originally?
we moved to Boston. So I lived
All
up
right.
north for most of my life here in the States, right? And I started working for a company there, and I had an opportunity to move here to South Florida.
All
And
right.
I took my company on that opportunity, and I've been here for the past almost 6 years.
Yeah. So okay. So tell us about that. What are you doing?
So currently, I work for a security company, security manufacturer of various security hardware and software. My role there is what they call a sales engineer. It's a lot of different things encompassed under one name, but it's basically like a technical consultant for a lot of the bigger accounts that we work with, right? So our company sells
Hmm.
to. I'm under no non-disclosure agreements with some of those companies, so I can't necessarily mention all of them.
Right.
But
Of course not.
think, especially when security, think of critical infrastructure, think airports,
Hmm.
cruise lines, big retail chains, hospitals, and all of them have all different kinds of requirements, right? They have different regulations they got to follow. They have different requirements when it comes to security, when it comes to communication, etc. Right? So our security company typically deals with network devices. So anything that sits on a network, everything around us is on a network today, right? Everything from your cell
Hmm.
phone to bigger things out there, to things that make transactions happen, cryptocurrency, everything
Right.
is on some sort of network, and is using that same protocols for communication, right? So where my role comes in is I basically work with our accounts, and they come to me with a problem, right? They say we have a certain security problem, and I come to them as a consultant and say, okay, well, we have so and so products, and this is probably going to help you solve your particular issue.
Hmm.
Sometimes they come to me and say, okay, well, we have certain components A, B, and C. Will your component D that you sell work with it? And I can tell it, well, it might work, but to a certain extent, right?
All right.
So I kind of come in as helping them put these different puzzle pieces together to create a full security system, right? And to achieve a particular goal. And it can be anything from physical security, right? When we're talking about deterrence, when we're talking about, for example, security at an airport, right? Looking for a particular person, um, different video analytics, right? Being able to search for, a person in a red hat, for example, right? Down to cybersecurity questions, right? When it comes to securing actual networks, more abstract things. How do we prevent uh, external threats, internal threats, right, to our networks? Basically, educating customers and installers alike on best practices when it
All
comes
right.
to network security.
I want to ask you, what is some heads up that you can give us on the Internet of Things? Because I imagine there's going to be some really big changes as far as how we interact with our what seems to be daily, everyday devices now, but soon everything is going to be like it has to be on this computer grid.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that you should always be cognizant of is privacy, right? So be cognizant of the fact that anything that you do on the internet, you're
Hmm.
leaving some sort of paper trail, right?
Right.
So be cognizant of the fact that, say 20 years ago, two people have a conversation, right? And person A says something, no one else but person B knew what he said, right? And if he told someone else, right, that would be completely on the person's willingness and ability to believe what that person said about person A, right? Right now, everything is kind of essentially a ledger, right? Everything is about big
Mm.
data, everything is about collection. So whenever you're using something, right, let's say you're using a free app, just be cognizant of the fact that you're actually not using it for free, right? Someone is using that app to collect data from you, right,
Right.
for their own purposes. They might either use it to sell it to someone, right, that could be part of their business model, or they could use it down the line for something that could potentially be used against you, right? You never know. Let's say you want to run for office tomorrow, right, and
Mm.
they might pull up some tweets, that you made 10 years ago. Maybe you didn't think about them, or maybe they were appropriate at the time, right? But they're not
Right.
appropriate now. And you see it happen all the time right now with high-profile people, athletes, politicians.
Well, the next thing I'm going to ask you is, what do you know about the social rating system?
Social rating system, as far as
Like they're implementing a system where everyone has like a social rating,
like a social credit.
and then
Unfortunately, yeah, that's a big topic nowadays too. I don't know if that's something that's going to be implemented here. I hope not. It's something that I feel very strongly against. But I know that they're already piloting a system like that in China, right?
yeah, I heard
In
India as well also.
in some places in Asia, right? China kind of being the forefront, where essentially you have all these different sensors, right? We have Internet of Things, right? You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
Internet of Things. We have cameras, we have different sensors, right? And everything is working together all in one network, and they're all collecting some sort of data, right? Whether it's
Right.
visual data, audible data, etc. The premise of, for example, the social credit system in China is that um, it collects everything you do, right? So just like you have a credit score right now where it collects all your transactions and your spending habits, the social credit system uses all these different sensors that are around you, right, including your phone, to basically collect data and create a profile of the type of person you are. And based on that profile, the government, right, or a corporate entity, whatever, whoever's controlling that data, can make different decisions about you. Basically
Mm-hmm.
saying that doesn't necessarily have to be something criminal, right? It can be something like, oh, well, you go out and you watch too many movies, right? Now we're going to make an assumption that you're a lazy person, right? That you watch too many movies, maybe you don't work, maybe you don't contribute to society anyway, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
why should we give that person the ability to advance himself or give his kids an ability to go to a nicer school,
Exactly.
that type of thing, right? And in China, this is something they're already piloting, right? Obviously, it's
Mm-hmm.
something utopian. Oh, we want to build a better society, etc. Um, People will tell you different things about this. Honestly, I think a lot of it is about control, right? It's definitely about controlling society and about prohibiting certain parts of society from maybe advancing or trying to create a better lifestyle for themselves. Obviously, here in the Western world, in places like the United States, where we value things like freedom, personal freedom, right?
Freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech,
Right.
freedom of pursuit of happiness, things like that, right? This is not compatible with who we are as a nation at its core,
Right.
right? Will there be some sort of system like that in the future? I mean, obviously, our world is changing so fast. I couldn't even
I think
imagine what's happening
they're
today, to 3 years ago, but um, we'll see. I mean, it
they're
really,
working on
really
it.
comes down to it.
They're working on making it socially acceptable here. They're gonna figure out a way to get the people to actually probably want it.
Unfortunately, I think you're right because I think they will find a way to justify it, and people will ask for it
Hmm.
themselves, right? That's how it will
I mean,
become
what
normalized.
will happen is they'll create the events to justify the need for that type of security. Whether it's something that they do in the metaverse, maybe they have some type of occurrences where they can say, oh, well, see, this is dangerous. We have to know where everybody is and what they're doing
Hmm.
at all times. Um, then also the question is, what are they going to do with the jab? That can somehow be intertwined with that. Well, we need to know that you're healthy and you're taking care of yourself because you're putting other people at risk. This is why we need to know so much about your eating habits, your sleeping habits, your health, and make that information accessible.
I mean, you can see elements of it already happening,
Right.
right? You go to some countries, they make you download an app, right, that
Hmm.
tracks you, and it's basically the way they justify it is, okay, have you been in contact with someone who has been sick, right?
Exactly.
But in reality, what they're doing is they're tracking every single place that you go to, right? And then
Right.
what they do with that data, I don't know. But again, it's all a matter of data collection, right, and who owns that data and how that data can potentially be used against you, right,
Right.
whether it's today or down the line. So that's all back to your original question. These are all things that we kind of need to be cognizant of, right? We shouldn't be out there, trying to fight it because it's not possible, right? Technology is all around us. This is going to
Hmm.
exist. I think we should try to transcend it. I think we should try to just be cognizant of it. I mean, there are different ways that you can conceal your identity online, right? Conceal your IP address.
Right.
These are all different things that can help you be more private online, right? Encrypted conversations. A lot of these apps that you use today, obviously WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, right? So you want to, you can make your own assumptions about that, right? As
Well,
far as
yeah,
data
it's
control.
definitely encryptable now.
Right. Is it
Not,
encrypted?
I
Yes.
don't.
Can it
Yeah,
be decrypted by
exactly.
the organization that owns it?
Of
Absolutely.
course. Yeah.
There's other alternatives out
Yeah,
there
like the
like
Signal and
Signal, Telegram.
Telegram.
There's
Yeah.
others.
For
But
now, until they, because when WhatsApp first came out, it was supposedly,
yeah.
encrypted. So, yeah, they're
Well,
gonna
for
change it.
example, some countries either even ban VPNs, right? So if you know what a
Yeah,
VPN
yeah.
is, virtual
To
private network,
change
your IP
your IP
address.
address.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah. So I mean, America just seems like it's the last of a dying breed. I think a lot of these liberties are gonna die soon in the U.S. and once they kill it here, nowhere else in the world is gonna really be able to prevent it. I think we're the last, you know, hurdle they got to get over as far as any sense of freedom is concerned. That's kind of what we stand for. So I think they're trying to rub it out, but they're getting the American people to gradually, do it willingly, so that there isn't a fight or a resistance.
But if you noticed in the past year, especially, there's been more and more resistance to this kind of
Hmm.
thing. I think more and more people are kind of waking up to what's going on, and they're more cognizant of the things that are happening. Right, a lot of things that were, for example, a conspiracy theory 2 years ago, right,
Oh yeah, it's fact
are
now.
coming to fruition.
Right.
It's there's even a joke going around that a difference between conspiracy and fact is 6 months. Right, so just give it some time.
Basically.
Not saying that you should go out and follow every single crazy thing that you see out there, but just
Right.
kind of be cognizant of the patterns. How our world is changing. I'm not so pessimistic about we're doomed and this is kind of
Yeah,
our
right.
life
Yeah. I mean, it's
our
just gonna
life
be
from
some
now on.
changes.
But
It's gonna change, and some people will be able to adapt. Most won't. Um, so yeah, I think it's just some planning. People have to start doing some research and start understanding what these agendas are, so they can kind of predict what's coming and kind of prepare themselves. So now is definitely not the time to be like maybe necessarily working for certain companies that might be implementing these mandates any minute now. Um, there's a lot of licenses that are going to be harder to get coming soon. They're going to make it a lot more difficult to get certain things. So, I mean, just things like that. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure getting a passport isn't going to be that simple in the next few years. So we just kind of have to understand that there's definitely going to be some changes, and it's going to affect our, quality of life as we know it. I think one of the first things to go, you already mentioned, is going to be privacy. I think as we're going forward, privacy is going to start to really evaporate. And I think they've kind of given us a look into what to expect in all the movies. Like the movies they've been giving us in the last 15 years, when they show the future. I mean, even something like Minority Report, where they're arresting criminals before they commit the crime.
well, some people think that it's something called predictive
Oh
programming,
yeah, that's a real
where they actually give you the material to give you a preview,
thing.
right,
So your
of what's to
subconscious
come.
accepts it.
Exactly. So you accept it on a subconscious level, and then it becomes second nature, right?
Yeah, like you
Once it does get
expected that to
implemented,
happen
yeah.
by 2030
Absolutely.
or 20, whatever. And 2030 is probably, going to look so different than 2020 did.
Right.
You know what I mean? Drastically differently, as far as, I'm not just talking about the technology, but as far as the rules. You know what I mean? What the rules are, what the expectations are, what one has to do, I think is going to change drastically. And the young people um, aren't going to be as uncomfortable as maybe, the generation that's like 40 something, 50 something now. Those are the people that are going to be like, this is, no, I don't want to know. I don't agree with.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think the younger people are going to be like, what, this is how it is.
Yeah. This is all we know.
Yeah, this is
right?
all we know. This is how
Yeah.
it's always been. So, yeah, we'll see. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the hacking. So tell me about that, because that's going around a lot, and a lot of people have no idea how that works. Like, how are the Instagram
So
getting hacked?
hacking in general is a broad term, right? When we talk about hacking, people always think about broken Instagram accounts and scams and malicious activity, etc. Right? Hacking is an umbrella term. There's so many different things that fall under hacking. For example, I have a ethical hacking certification, right? Ethical meaning white hat, right, as opposed to black hat. There's even, like I said, ethical hacking, which companies actually pay for, right, as a service for someone to go and simulate an attack onto their network, so they find out where the weak spots
weak
are, right?
areas
We
are,
kind of
right.
look for the weakest link, right? And honestly, hacking, when you see in movies, right, it's always like, attacking and programming and something very kind of action oriented, right?
Yeah.
When in reality, most of hacking is reconnaissance, right? It's actually sitting and observing, whether it's on a network, right? Whether it's you just kind of, sitting on that couch, being a fly on the wall, right? And kind of observing your environment and see where you can take advantage of something, right?
Right.
So hacking doesn't necessarily have to involve computers, right? And programming or anything kind of technical, right? Hacking can be something as simple as social engineering. It can be you trying to use some sort of situation, manipulate a situation to gain access or escalate your privilege to something, right? For example, this is also an example of hacking, right? Or social engineering is, let's say you put on the suit of a Comcast guy, or a cable guy, right? And you go into someone's house and you say, "Oh, I have to work on
You get
some
access.
infrastructure,"
Yeah.
right? You've just escalated your privilege. Now you've gained access to their house. They believed you, right? And obviously, this is the most simple example. And then
But
you
that
go
shit,
in.
the type of shit works though.
Yeah.
Because they're taking it on face value. You have the clipboard. You have the
Exactly.
the little name tag.
Right. But before he did that, right? How much reconnaissance did he have to do, right?
Right.
He'd have to go.
He'd
and
have
watch
to even
that
know they had
house.
an issue with the cable.
Exactly. Go watch that house. Go
Or he
watch that person's
does something
habits.
to make them call the cable, but when they call the cable, somehow they get routed to him.
Exactly. And hacking is so broad. I mean, it can be something as silly as hacking someone's social media account, to I don't know, post something or
Yeah,
spy on
we're
pictures.
getting a lot of that lately. So, do you know anything about what are steps that can be taken for, say, a hacked Instagram?
Well, honestly, when it's already hacked, the best thing you can do is reach out to Instagram, to be honest with you,
Right.
right, to recover your account. There's nothing that you can do from a technical standpoint once you've been locked out. How do these things get hacked is typically simple passwords, right? So typically people pick passwords for things that are easy to remember, right? They're typically words in a dictionary, or they're a place or they're a thing, etc., right? So when, for example, you hack something, and this is kind of from the pen testing world and something that I was educated in, is you can actually use something called a dictionary attack, right? Where you have literally a list of millions and millions of words, right? Common
Wow.
words like door or something that's in the dictionary, right? And use that list to just keep attacking a device.
Is there a
or
system that's
password.
going to keep doing that for you?
So that's the thing, right? A lot of these, there's systems that can do that, right? There's software that can do that, but there's also ways to protect against that, right? So obviously, companies like Instagram, right, or Facebook, they have a lot of resources and a lot of technologies to help them protect against stuff like that. But even so, like, these companies still manage to get hacked.
Yeah, they do.
Because these different passwords and things, I mean, there's data leaks that happen. Passwords get leaked all the time, whether you know it or not, right? Sometimes your password that you use might actually end up in a data leak somewhere for a malicious actor to then compile it into a list of, again, millions of different hashes and passwords and things like that to later be used against a site. What I can recommend, especially for the non-technical users, right, or someone who's not very well versed in cybersecurity, is password complexity. Make sure your passwords are not just random words, right? There may be a combination of letters and numbers and symbols and things like that, right? Because that exponentially increases the amount of processing power, right?
Right.
That would take to decrypt that, right? Or hack that password. And it can't be used with a password list, right? If I just make up a collection of letters, right, that's not a word in the dictionary. Unless that shows up in a data leak somewhere, it's very unlikely that password's going to get discovered, right? Typically, it's a lot of it's negligence too. Like, sometimes people just leave their things open, right?
Yeah.
And people take advantage of it that way.
Or a lot of people
Simple stuff.
have said that they got sent something that was like spam, and then they opened it, and then somehow
Yeah.
they got a breach like that.
That's actually called phishing with PH, right? So sometimes you'll get sent emails that's going
Right.
to try to siphon information from you in some way, right? Or phone calls, right?
Wow.
Remember, like, the old Nigerian prince scams? Send us $300. You're the heir to the next
Oh,
prince of Nigeria. That's like early 2000s stuff. I mean, that's
This
way
is
old,
crazy. Yeah.
but I mean, stuff like that happens, especially to more vulnerable people, like for example the elderly, right?
Yeah, they call them up.
They call
Jamaican
them up,
scammers,
yeah.
they'll call them up and tell them they want some money, but they have to like send some money to get the money.
Or they'll threaten them, be like, "Listen, you committed a crime. You've been accused of selling drugs or something like that, right?"
What?
And yeah, stuff like that happens. They come from an authoritative standpoint as
Yeah.
opposed to something else, right? And someone who's not really well versed, right? Or
It's
they
gonna think a real detective called them.
right, or if they're elderly, they just don't deal enough with technology and they don't deal with that kind of stuff. And like, oh my God, like what do I need to do? It's like, oh,
Yeah,
give us your social security
yeah,
number.
exactly.
Right, yeah.
Sometimes they'll act like they're the bank calling, and then they'll ask you for all this information to verify.
Exactly.
And they get all your
Right.
information. Well, let me ask you this: have you ever hacked an ex-girlfriend?
No, I've never really cared enough
You never
to do stuff like that. I mean, honestly, if
They're too easy to replace.
it's easy to replace, first of all, and if it's again, if there's trust in the relationship, I shouldn't have to do stuff like that. And
Yeah, well, you can't trust these bitches.
you can't trust anybody, but at the same time, it's like it's not worth my effort to do
What
something
about
like that.
what about somebody like trying to hire you to let you know something about a girl to hack into something?
I've never had that.
Never,
No,
never
had
over.
that. No.
Okay. Yeah, man, I figured. All right. Well, listen. Thanks for putting us up on game.
Absolutely.
And
It was a
this
pleasure.
career you're talking about. Like, what is it average? Like the salary.
It can range. I mean, it's definitely in the three figures.
So it's something
It's
something
definitely
guys would want to
something-
get into.
Definitely something guys would want to get into.
How
and
many
it's-
years did it take to learn this to be able to qualify to get in there?
Well, I've taken different steps, right? So I've had different jobs throughout my career, right? This is kind of where I am now. But honestly, everything started out from video games. Like when I was younger,
Oh,
I loved
shit.
playing fucking video games. So that kind of got me interested in computers and viruses and
Wow.
networking and things like that, right? And kind of hobbies turned into careers, right? So it's definitely something that I enjoy. Like I enjoy learning about technology, and it's definitely something that you're never going to be at a point where you know everything. I'm not even close to that point, right? That I'll say I'll know everything. I'm always learning. And if you
Right.
love to learn, if you like technology, it's definitely a good career path for you.
The money keeps getting more and more.
Exactly. And then it's also a good career path from the standpoint that network devices are not going away.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere, so it's
not
only
job
going to be
security.
growing, right? It's job security. It's something that is very flexible, right? I could work in security today. I could go work for an IT company tomorrow, right?
So,
or something else.
what is the names of some of these careers, that these crafts that these guys should get into?
So actual
Yeah,
like job titles?
Yeah, job titles, and what is the skill set called that they need to be looking into if they want to practice?
So
this?
skill sets that you probably would need to look into, if you're getting into computers, would be networking, right? So having a fundamental understanding of a computer network, right? How that works, because everything is on a network, right? Everything's some sort of communication, TCP/IP communication.
Right.
So having that understanding, some basic understanding of cybersecurity concepts, right? So network security, hardening, things like that, and just whatever that piques your interest, right? Whatever company that you work with, maybe it's a company that makes recording servers, right? Or maybe it's a company that makes security cameras. It can be
Right.
a variety of different kind of subgroups of skill sets that you need
Something
for
to
those.
specifying.
But I think the umbrella would be definitely like computer networking is going to be the big one to know. For sure, and I think it's going to take you a long way, no matter which specific career you want to take
choose,
in
yeah.
technology. Just having, it's kind of like no math, right, to go into engineering. Having those basics, you can't do calculus if you don't know your multiplication table,
Right.
It's kind of like that stuff. You can always build on top of it, but you got to build some base, right? Some
Sounds
basic
awesome.
knowledge.
So that's yeah, man, some useful geeky shit.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're gonna get out of here. Look into that if you're interested. All right, we're out of here. Peace.
Take care.